Hi, Leah here from Alpine Physical Therapy. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to spend a little bit of time going over the basics of nutrition for sport. And because there's a lot of information out there, I'm just going to try to simplify it for you and break it down into two main parts. Today, we will go through part one, which is what to eat. And we'll talk about the main sources of energy for our body and then finish up with a little review of what the food pyramid looks like for athletes. So thanks for tuning in and let's get started. We're going to begin with a little discussion on the three main sources of energy for our body, which are fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Fats, we're going to begin with just because they get kind of the worst, they have the worst reputation. People tend to try to avoid fats unnecessarily. Fats are extremely important for our body. They help with cellular functions such as transporting vitamins, they protect internal organs, and they help us maintain a healthy central nervous system. Fats are also one of the best sources of energy in our body. They provide more calories of energy per gram than any other food source. So super important when you're looking for energy for those long duration sporting events. You know, you have multiple games in a day, or you're running a longer race, going out for a longer ski. Fats are one of the main sources of energy when you're working at lower intensities for longer periods of time. So we almost always tap into them at some point during our physical activity as a source for caloric energy. And that being said, just also remember throughout this that calories are units of energy. So just like fats, calories kind of have a bad rap out there. And I think kind of making that switch in your mind of calories being energy can really help you understand that the amount and types of food that we eat is essential for maintaining a healthy body as athletes. A little simple rule for fats: for each hour of exercise, just try to add about a half a serving to what the recommended daily amount is from the food pyramid, and we'll cover that a little bit later. Also, try to limit the saturated fats and go for the unsaturated fats. So your saturated fats are going to be more in the form of processed foods, and unsaturated fats are going to find more in natural foods, fish, nuts, seeds, and fresh fruits and vegetables. So let's move on to carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, I think, get linked in with pasta and carbo loading, that big pregame meal. Well, they are that, and there are also more. Carbohydrates are a really valuable source of energy for moderate and high intensity activity. They also can help improve our digestion and promote heart health. They don't give you quite as much energy per gram as fats do. They only provide about 4 calories of energy per gram, and also need to be replenished a little bit more than fats do. So for each hour of exercise, you need to try to add 1 full serving of carbohydrates in addition to what the basic food pyramid recommends. Carbs can be broken down into 2 types: simple carbs and your complex carbs. And simple carbs are more sugar-based. You're going to find that in your fruits and vegetables and dairy. And complex carbs are a little bit more starchy, so whole grain bread, your pastas. Kind of complex carbs you can find in everything from a donut all the way down to your really healthy whole grain oats and breads. And ideal to kind of aim for the latter, aim for those whole grains. Another important concept to understand for carbs is the glycemic index. This is a big buzzword in sports right now, with athletes really trying to time glycemic index foods, categorize them, and then time when they eat which type of food. Definitely don't need to get into that much detail. Really, it is a lot more simple than some people try to make it. So your glycemic index, by definition, is just how fast your carbs are converted into sugar, into glucose, and then pumped around your body for energy. They range from your lowest glycemic index, which is anything under 55. And if you look at the chart on this slide, that's going to be, your breads and oatmeal and whole grains. You even get sometimes you can get a little bit of dairy and some ice cream, milk in there, fresh fruits and vegetables. Your higher glycemic index foods are going to provide immediate sources of energy, and that's going to be like your sugars, your donuts. Surprisingly, watermelon is up there as a high glycemic food, and then some of your more white bread based starches, so French fries, waffles, white bread, Last is protein, and proteins are amino acids, so they're the building blocks of our body. They make muscle, bone, tendons, skin. They also can help transport nutrients around our body. They're not really an ideal source of energy for us, a little bit harder for our body to access and break down, and it does help. Proteins help with carbohydrate storage, so we do sometimes tap into our protein source for energy, and it's important to recognize that and realize that we do need to make sure that proteins are part of our recovery meal. We'll get into that a little bit later on when to eat, but because proteins do form the building blocks for our muscles, after an event where you kind of have some muscle damage just from the exercise itself, proteins become really important. Like carbs, they only provide about 4 calories of energy per gram, and they are categorized into 2 different types. You've got your complete proteins and your incomplete proteins. Complete proteins have all 11 amino acids, mostly found in fish and meat and eggs, and then your incomplete proteins have lower amounts of 1 or more of those 11 amino acids. Beans, grains, nuts, vegetables. Doesn't mean that they're bad, it just means that they need to be eaten more in combination with one another. And they can all provide various sources of other types of energy, which is your fats and your carbs. So you end up getting proteins, carbs, and fats in combination in multiple types of food sources. So let's finish up with just a quick look at the food pyramid, which here we have is adapted for athletes. And this came from the Swiss Society for Nutrition. At the very bottom are beverages, and it's something that I didn't talk about with the 3 main sources of energy, but is absolutely essential for our body during sport. So hydration and fluids, you have to pay really close attention to. For each hour of exercise, you need to add about 400 to 800 milliliters of water or some sort of a sport drink a day, and your baseline should be about 1 to 2 liters a day already. So filling your water bottle up in the morning and just making sure that you drink an entire, 1, 2, 3 bottles of water, depending on what your level of activity is that day, is a great way to track and make sure that you're getting enough water. Then moving up the food pyramid are your vegetables and fruits, and then whole grain products and legumes. So that's where you're going to find your carbohydrates. And you'll see off to the right what I mentioned already, that for each additional hour of exercise, trying to add about 1 serving of these a day is necessary to keep your body healthy. Going up to the next level are your meat, dairy products, fish, eggs. It's a lot of the protein, and for the most part, we have enough protein that's recommended in our daily diet to cover what we need for sport. It's more the timing of when you eat the protein that's going to be important, and we'll touch on that in part 2. Last 2 levels are your oils, fats, and nuts, and then at the very top, your sweets, your salty snacks, and your sweetened drinks, and those you just want to eat on occasion. And again, it can be really important to just recognize that the timing of some of those sweeter things in relation to your activity can make a huge impact on your performance. So, little basic nutrition 101 for you. I look forward to seeing you guys for part 2 when we learn a little bit more about how we can incorporate this knowledge into creating a good meal plan and timing our meals appropriately. Thanks a lot.